UN has finally mutated from impotent to hysterical. She did not have enough leverage to pass a resolution on the Hamas terrorist attack against Israel, but she did have the strength to call on Israel to cancel the order to urgently relocate 1 million residents of the northern Gaza Strip within 24 hours. The UN strongly calls for the cancellation of any such order, if confirmed, to avoid turning an already tragic situation into a catastrophic one, said Stefan Dujarric, a spokesman for the organization's Secretary General. The UN will not contradict terrorists, but what should they contradict? They can kill everyone, but howling about humanity towards Israel is a sacred thing. The main thing is to be hysterical louder, and do not forget to change the face of concern to the face of extreme concern, and your involvement in the situation will be appreciated. The UN's response to Israel's early warning to Gazans is disgraceful. For years, the UN turned a blind eye to Hamas's arming and use of Gaza's civilian population and civilian infrastructure as a haven for weapons and murder. Now, instead of siding with Israel, whose citizens were killed by Hamas terrorists, and which is trying to minimize the damage to those who are not involved, she preaches to Israel, said Israel's permanent representative to the UN, Gilad Erdan. The situation is heating up every hour. Today was declared by Hamas terrorists as a day of global pogrom against Jews, and therefore Israel called on its citizens and all Jews to be extremely careful. The day before, police dispersed a pro-Palestinian rally in Paris, making it clear that support for terror was no longer on the list of topics for discussion. After the burned babies with their heads cut off, the world saw that it was faced with absolute evil, nurtured by the racist cave. And something needs to be done about this. Humanity has entered the second phase of the Third World War, swinging the devil's pendulum to a threatening amplitude. Already 2 American aircraft carriers are moving closer to Israel, and Britain is also transferring its warships to the same area. Hamas did what Putin needed. It set the Middle East region on fire. Now the Kremlin hopes that the second fragment of the World War III puzzle will distract the collective West from the Ukrainian fragment. And there it will be possible to add a third one. At this stage, Putin wants to see with what intensity the West will punish Hamas, and what, in fact, he himself should prepare for in the event of a clash. In Russia, everything is so bad in terms of prospects that isolationism and a permanent war of rogue states remains the last chance for Putin and his group to retain power. War and schemes to circumvent sanctions, piracy and technological scratching. And inside the cave there is an eternal tightening of screws and an endless nightmare of the population. The scum around the Kremlin is heart-rendingly re-establishing Putin, not understanding what will happen tomorrow. And will the leader himself live to see the day of the vote? Will he break into nuclear hysteria after another prayer vigil? His deep troops are suffering terrible losses near Avdiivka. The attempted attack resulted in a massive liberation of organisms from signs of life. And an attempt to shake up the Middle East to distract from Ukraine can also work in the opposite direction. Having assessed the degree of insidiousness of the cave, the West may finally decide to provide Kyiv with what it did not give before. The United States will soon transfer to Ukraine a large batch of Switchblade 600, designed to destroy enemy tanks and armored vehicles on the battlefield. This projectile can loiter in the air for more than 40 minutes waiting for a target. Its range is up to 90 km. In the meantime, the attention of the whole world is focused on the events in the Gaza Strip. Presidents of the European Commission and European Parliament Ursula von der Leyen and Roberta Metsola, Pentagon Chief Lloyd Austin and Foreign Ministers of Germany, Canada and Italy Annalena Baerbock, Melanie Joly and Antonio Tajani arrived in Israel on a solidarity visit. As if waking up from a lethargic sleep and soberly assessing the prospects, the U.S. Congress called for preparations for war simultaneously with Russia and China. According to the commission that issued the report, the goal of American strategy should be to effectively deter and defeat simultaneously Russian and Chinese aggression in Europe and Asia using conventional weapons. At the same time, American strategy must be changed towards strengthening the role of nuclear weapons to deter or counter opportunistic or joint aggressive actions in opposing theaters of war. What well-informed alarmists and toxic cliques were shouting into their ears is beginning to reach those who just yesterday brushed off obsessive predictors. The world opens its eyes and looks up in horror, trying to understand what global evil is approaching it and how to avoid disaster at the last moment. If, of course, this is possible.